So, what is the most common problem students face when clearing navigation subject?
Yes, for students, I have. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pilot Podcast, India's number one podcast, where we talk about a lot of intricacies of pilot's life, and we talk about the entire journey of pilot training and how the training goes on, as well as how is pilot life. So today is Raksha Bandhan Day, and we are here shooting.
Yes.
Yes. So yes, we were like, we have to do this anyhow, no matter whether it is any festival. We have to go out, or we have to get this.
Yes. First of all, welcome back to Pilot Podcast. And so, what's happening is like we are waiting for all of three of us to get
Yes.
here on the
Together.
same
Yes,
time.
Yes.
But that's kind of difficult. So, what we have decided now is any two of us available, we are
Yes.
going to shoot the podcast. So, today Nilay is
Yes.
out for some work.
Yes.
So he will be there in the next episode probably.
Correct.
But yeah, whenever we are available, we'll sit, we'll
Yes.
discuss what happened in the week,
Absolutely.
how's the flying going on, and if there is any changes or any news or any knowledge we would like to share with the aspiring pilots, we are here to share. And this is a very good medium, I would say, for aspiring pilots. Because back in your days, I'm sure that no one would be there to like guide you, or
Correct.
you might not
Correct,
even
correct.
know any pilot
Correct.
who is working for an airline.
Right,
So
right.
if you were to seek advice, there was no one.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But
How
now,
are you doing? How
I'm-
is your flight going? And I am really missing those days when I used
Yes,
to fly
yes.
every day. But yes, how is flying?
Flying is going pretty good. There are a couple of new airports which I'm going to. Couple of new international destinations unlocked this month.
Wow, which
So I went to Ras Al Khaimah
one? Okay.
and
nice.
Abu Dhabi as well.
Okay, good.
But both were red-eye flights, so I have to plan my day accordingly, because that's
Yes.
we know that we are signing up for all this
Correct.
schedule. So it's not that every day there'll be a red-eye flight. In a week, maybe one,
Correct.
and that's also not sure. So in a month, roughly 2 or 3 red-eye flights is quite manageable,
Correct,
because you do get sufficient amount of rest.
Correct.
So I'm enjoying those flights because whenever we go to the airport, there's no traffic on the road. You reach in like 15 minutes. On the
Absolutely.
way coming back, you land at around 5-6 a.m. So there's no traffic
Correct. That's good.
way back home.
Right.
So
right.
you save a lot of time in that, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, and apart from that, flying is pretty good. Monsoon is about to get over, and soon after a month or 2 months, we'll be in the winter season.
Correct,
and then
correct.
somewhere around December, there'll be low visibility operations starting. So that is something which I'll be operating in for the first time. So I have to go through the LVO operations procedures and stuff.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
yes. So with flying, like studying is a continuous process.
Absolutely.
As we tell all the aspiring pilots that if you are signing up to become a pilot, you have to keep updated with the knowledge, with the flying, and you have to study each and every day, because that's what we have signed up.
Absolutely.
You tell me
Yes.
what's going on with you.
Oh, with me, yes, I have been speaking to some CNTAA students and taking their updates and, taking their sessions, doubt sessions, and all that stuff is happening along with my personal life, where I am spending more time with my
Yes.
kid. So, yes, gradually the time would be reduced with him. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Right now is the time to spend with the kid, right? So when
Yes.
do you plan to resume flying?
I plan to resume when he turns 1.
Okay.
Yes.
Good,
So
yeah.
till then,
It's a good time.
I have a lot of things to do. Not that I am not going to work till then. I will be working for CNTAA. But yes, flying I will resume after he turns 1.
Okay,
Yes.
that's a great thought. Yes, speaking about the work. So what work are you doing currently?
So that is regarding the CNTAA students, whether taking their updates, whether they are on track, whether they are ready for the upcoming exam, or they need more practice. So have to explain them how they should go about it. Like every particular course has got a structure, that is explanation of each topic.
Okay.
Like let's say if it is navigation, then in navigation there are 6 sub subjects. Like there is general navigation, there is radio aids, flight instruments, mass and balance, flight planning, aircraft performance, all of it. So I have to ensure that they are good at all of them. And it is not like one of the topic, but yes, like aircraft performance, it is very very important to understand the performance of your own airplane, as well as what factors would affect the performance. So here we will be discussing about all the subjects and how they are really important.
Yeah, so if an aspiring pilots want to do their training from India, then they have to give 5 subjects: air navigation, air regulation, aviation meteorology, technical general, and technical specific.
Correct.
And if they want to do their training from abroad, like I did, there are 3 subjects which are same: air navigation, air regulation, and aviation meteorology.
Correct.
So as you are a ground instructor teaching students since the past
Around
20
years.
yeah. So
Yeah.
since you are a ground instructor, you have trained thousands of students, and you have been teaching students for DGCA exams since the past 16 years. Can you share about the each subjects, like what all does it give in, and how many subparts are there in each subject? Yeah.
So if you consider air navigation, then in air navigation there are 6 subtopics. So the topics are, first of all, general navigation, then radio aids, flight instruments, mass and balance, flight planning, and aircraft performance. These are the topics. So if you talk about general navigation, then that has like how latitude, longitudes are there, then earth, how the distances are measured in north-south direction, east-west direction, how the track directions change when you go from place A to B, or when you want to go from one place to another, if in case there is no other alternate available, then how to calculate the distances up to which you can go safely and come back. So that is critical point of no return, those things. Then when we talk about radio aids, so when we fly from one place to other, a layman would always think, how would a pilot know what is the route in air? So there are radio waves in air. So as you know that there are radio waves, those radio waves are propagated and transmitted by certain ground stations on ground, and the modern navigation uses GPS satellites. So that is the means in which the radio navigation is carried out. So the details of those navaids are studied in radio aids. Followed by that, how the instrument approaches are performed, instrument landing system, that is also studied in radio aids, as well as how air traffic controllers control and monitor airplane altitude and airplane data on their screen. That is also studied in radio waves and radio aids topic. So this is explained in detail in this particular topic, as well as how these radio waves propagate, what are the types of radio waves, what is the wave which is propagating close to the ground, what is the type of the wave that goes up to the sky and then returns back. So from ionosphere, the waves that return back. So there are many detailed information which is discussed in radioids. Then flight instruments. So when we talk about flight instruments, so there are a lot of instruments in the cockpit. So as a layman, if you've peeked inside the cockpit, then might have seen so many instruments there.
Mhm.
So these flight instruments need to be interpreted really well.
Mhm.
And so there are pressure instruments, there are gyroscopic instruments, magnetic instruments, as well as there are modern, instruments which are into one display. Like for example, in the conventional airplanes, there used to be six-pack instruments,
Yes.
and now in the modern airplanes, there is glass cockpit, wherein there is LCD or LED displays, wherein all these conventional six-pack
Mhm.
in dial instruments are no longer used, and now we use the digital instruments. So that is the reason why we have, a lot of instruments interpretation to be
Mhm.
done correctly. So that is studied in flight instruments.
So can you explain what or how does an altimeter work? Just for the aspiring pilots to know what they are going to study.
Okay, so altimeter is something that measures altitude with
Mhm.
respect to a reference datum. Altitude is nothing but it is a vertical distance from the reference which you select. Okay,
Yes.
so let's say that instrument has something called as one casing. Okay, so there is one vacuum in this particular chamber, and that is there in one case. Okay,
Okay.
so that is called as the aneroid, you know uh,
Wafer.
aneroid wafer,
Hmm.
or aneroid capsule, you
Capsule.
can call it
Yeah.
as. Now if there is a static pressure is, you are there at one place, and whatever pressure is being sensed by you is static pressure. Static means when you are at rest, then the pressure sensed by any what is known as static pressure at that
Mhm.
particular point. So static pressure is sensed by this capsule. Okay, it is fed with that. As you go at higher altitude, because the pressure reduces, this capsule would expand, and this expansion is calibrated to read in feet.
Mhm.
So those many feet an airplane is above a reference datum. So that is the simplest way in which this altimeter working can be explained. So that will be indicated as altitude above a reference datum. So again, reference datum has
Mhm.
many codes. So that will be detailed explanation which is studied later in the
Yes. When
chapter.
you prepare for
So
DGCA
yeah,
exams,
right.
yes.
So that's regarding the altimeter.
Mhm.
So that way there are many instruments as you mentioned. Then there are gyroscopic instruments which use the principle of gyroscope in their functioning, like attitude indicator.
Mhm.
Then there will be turn and slip indicator. Then there is heading indicator. Okay, and there are magnetic instruments, that is a direct indicating compass or remote indicating compass, which will use the principle of
Right.
magnetic compass, and that will indicate the direction, okay,
Mhm.
in which the airplane is flying. So this is about flight instruments. Then airplane performance or aircraft performance. So when we talk about aircraft performance, it is extremely important for a pilot to know what are limitations of your airplane.
Yes.
What are limitations, and what are the conditions in which an airplane will be able to get better aerodynamic performance, and in which the performance would reduce? What's exactly performance? In certain weather conditions, how much would be the takeoff roll? How much takeoff distance an airplane will take in order to get airborne at that particular airport? It will vary depending on many factors
Mhm.
like airplane weight, atmospheric conditions like pressure, temperature, etc. Apart from that, runway condition, runway slope, and
And how
many
much
other
load you are
things.
carrying? Yeah. Take
Yeah,
off
weight.
weight. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So that is very important to know. Plus climb performance, en
Mhm.
route performance, how much fuel an airplane will consume. All those things come under the airplane performance.
Yes, and plus the limitations of the aircraft is studied in the performance. So that's why we have speeds. We have never exceed speeds, the maximum speed at which the aircraft can fly, and then we also have the maximum altitude at which an aircraft can fly.
Correct.
So this all is related to performance, which we study in detail.
Correct.
And that also depends on the aircraft you are flying, which we study in tech specific, which we'll talk later.
Absolutely, yes. So this is about the various topics. Apart from that, even flight planning. So flight planning is also very important to be studied, like how the flight plan is filed and what is the fuel policy. So if we talk about a flight plan, then when you file a flight plan, then a certain information related to a flight which is important, that needs to be communicated to the air traffic controller in a prescribed format, like place of departure, destination, flight time, what is the speed of the airplane, then what is the route an airplane is going to fly. So all these things are mentioned there. That has to be mentioned there. Apart from that, fuel policy. So when we talk about fuel policy, then there are certain criteria based on which how much fuel needs to be carried is determined. Like for example, the fuel that we carry has to be calculated based on requirements like fuel required for taxi, fuel required to go from one place to other, that is trip fuel, that is flight fuel. Then you need reserve fuel for many factors. Okay, you can't just go land and you have no fuel with airplanes, right? So plus you have to consider many situations like weather and traffic. You have to consider what level you are flying at,
cruise,
etc.
yes.
So a lot of factors need to be considered. Apart from that, there are certain special conditions in which you might have to carry extra fuel. So that details are explained in the fuel policy. So this is about the
Flight
things
planning
that we study in flight planning.
And I also remember like what all things you just mentioned. So we used to prepare a flight log or flight navigation log for traveling for, let's say, a place A to B. So from Sanford we used to go to Vero Beach for cross country. So in that there'll be true heading, then you get the variance, and then you get the magnetic heading. So you have to apply the wind correction as well, and then when you go for a flight, you actually fly on the flight plan which you have filed, or the nav log which you have just made. And then the instructor will see how accurate is it. And 1 or 2 minutes here and there, and somewhere some fuel quantity here and there in gallons. And yeah, it was pretty much accurate because we used to take the weather online and then make a nav log according to that. So now when we fly for an airline, we don't have to do all of those things. The dispatcher will give us the nav log and
correct.
Yeah.
So you get the operational flight plan from an airline, and then you need to mention the timings at which you reach your waypoint compared to the calculated time.
Yes.
So if in case you have reached earlier, okay, then you just mention, okay, you've reached 1 minute early. Maybe you might have got some direct routing by air traffic controller, right? Or else, if you have consumed, let's say, more fuel than what is expected to consume, then you keep a track and check if there is no fuel leak. If in case there is, you have to take appropriate action. Okay, so these things need to be really monitored well. That means whatever is actual fuel, that you have to compare with the estimated fuel. Whatever is actual time, you have to compare it with estimated time, right? So that is to be compared on operational flight plan.
Okay.
So
that sums it up for navigation, right?
Yes, and even mass and balance.
Yes.
So mass and balance, like loading and trimming. So whenever an airplane is loaded, you can't just load anything and anywhere. Like you can't have lot of load behind, or you can't have a lot of load forward. It needs to be distributed in such a manner that the center of gravity of an airplane is within limits. So there are conditions which can cause CG to move behind the aft limit. So for example, so there is a forward limit and there is aft limit. Aft means rearward. A CG should not be forward of forward limit and CG should not be aft of aft
Half
limit.
limit.
If it is aft of aft limit, airplane will have stalling tendencies
Mm-hmm.
and that can lead to spin. If you know, there has been recent spin that happened in ATR in
Yes.
Canada. So one of the reason because of which stalling and spinning tendencies would be there is because CG is aft of aft limit.
Mm-hmm.
Then if CG is forward of forward limit, pilot will have difficulty in takeoff or landing at the time of flare.
Because the nose
So-
will be heavy.
because nose will be heavy. So there is a requirement to have CG within normal limits. Okay, if long ago there was one 747 cargo airplane, at the time of takeoff, entire cargo went back, and then that airplane stalled and crashed just after takeoff. So that is, because CG has got shifted aft of aft limit. So it is extremely important to have CG within limits, and it is pilot's responsibility to check that the airplane CG is within limits. So it is important to have a look at that also, and it's a very very important topic, that is mass and balance. Okay, so that is studied in that topic. Okay.
Yes. So whatever we study is basically applicable whenever we go for flying, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
And navigation is vast, and it's very interesting subject, to be honest, because it's something which you are learning for the first time. Like when I was studying for these exams, it was something that I was learning for the first time.
Correct.
And when you actually apply that knowledge, you feel good because like whatever you have studied at some point of time, you want to apply, right?
Correct. Absolutely. Yes. So it is very very important. Personally, yes, navigation is very interesting, and I love to
Mhm.
study that.
Yes. So as we discussed that navigation is such a vast subject. So in the span of 16 years, as you have trained over 1,000 aspiring pilots, so what is the most common problem students face when clearing navigation subject?
Yes, for students, I have really heard from them that they find navigation toughest out of all. So it is important to know concept and then go for exam. Many students think that if they do a certain question bank from a certain publication or certain classes, then they will pass the exam. But it is not that they will do one question bank and or whatever 2-3 question bank and they will pass just with that. But it is important that they understand what is there in a topic, and then any type of question that comes to them, they will be able to answer that. And nowadays, since the exam pattern is slightly modified and the questions are not directly asked from any particular question bank, at times, sometimes yes, they are same, but most of the times now the questions are formed by examiners, and they are not directly copy pasted from a certain question bank, and that is the reason why they don't make it. So it is important for them to know that they know the concept and then go for it. So that is the advice which I would like to give to students.
Yes, we have covered air navigation. Now moving on to aviation meteorology.
Yes. So in aviation meteorology, if you know, weather is one of the most danger or hazards to aviation when it comes to flying from one place to other. So if you know, you always check what is the en route weather, what is the whether you're going to experience any icing or thunderstorms or any fog at the time of landing, because this kind of weather is going to be hazardous. So when you're on ground, it rains or there is lightning, it doesn't really matter as much. But when you are in air, if you fly through clouds which has lot of lightning and thunder going on, it will be really dangerous with respect to lot of severe turbulence, with respect to severe icing, and that can be hazardous in the sense that with severe turbulence it can injure passengers, with severe icing it can block the static pitot probes, which can cause erroneous indications in the cockpit displays, which will be hazardous. So one of the reason why if you know Air France 447 flight, there was icing, they were flying through bad weather. Because of icing, the instrument displays started showing incorrect indications and the airplane went in a stall.
Okay.
And which was not correctly, the stall was not correctly recovered, because of which it crashed. So there are it is important to know that you avoid such bad weather condition and fly. Whether you should know what is weather, and it is weather radars are provided to pilots in the air, in the airplane, so they are there to avoid weather and not to pass through it. So these are the things which are learnt in meteorology, plus weather reports, how to read them, how to decode those reports, like METAR, TAF. Then like METAR is for a particular aerodrome, current meteorological report. Okay, TAF is terminal aerodrome forecast. So that's a forecast weather. So when you go, let's say, from Mumbai to New York, you have forecast weather of New York, and you have to check at the time of estimated time of arrival in New York what would be weather. You don't want to know what is the current
Current
weather
weather.
at that point, because you're going to land there after 16 or 18 hours. So there is no point knowing current weather. There is requirement to know what would be expected weather after those many hours, right? So that is a terminal aerodrome forecast. That's forecast weather. Plus you should know en route weather, what is a SIGMET, significant meteorological report. Okay, if there is any particular severe weather condition like stormy weather or dust storms or icing or turbulence happening, then that needs to be addressed and that needs to be known, so that you can avoid those areas and make a necessary announcement accordingly, so that passengers are well aware of.
Yes.
Okay.
So whenever there is a severe turbulence, when we expect, so nowadays we have it everything on the weather app, and we also get layers where we can expect turbulence.
Yes.
So at that time, the captain makes the announcement for passengers and the crew to be seated with their seatbelts fastened. So that is something now which the airlines have implemented after the recent severe turbulence incidents which happened in some of the airlines. So that is one measure which the airlines have came up with.
Correct.
But yes, overall, like whatever you said about meteorology is relevant, and also one of the thing is the type of clouds which we have studied about. So we have seen pictures about the cumulonimbus clouds, and which is one of the most dangerous cloud to fly in. So we can see the clouds and we can interpret which type of cloud is there, and then how much distance we should be staying away from it for safe operation of the flight.
Correct, absolutely.
Yes, that is about meteorology. So what common problem do students face in aviation meteorology?
Generally, meteorology is such subject which can be cleared with ease if they study properly. So if they know certain concepts well, this is also a subject where you need understanding of pressure systems, you need understanding of fronts, you need the understanding of how to decode these weather reports, as well as wind direction, wind speed, and where does it blow from, and pressure associated with it. So these things are where students might get stuck with a bit, so because of which they would need help. But otherwise, yeah, this is one of
Yes.
the subject with ease. Yeah.
Yes, and generally students start with aviation meteorology first, right?
Yes,
Because
yes.
once they clear that, they feel confident, and meteorology is something which can be studied in a month, whereas navigation might take 2 to 3 months. Technical general also might take 2 to 3 months
To study.
Study,
Yeah,
yes,
correct,
yes.
correct. Then they can clear in first attempt. We have so many students, almost
Yes,
a
yes.
lot of students, like 95% of students who clear in their first attempt. So that's not a problem.
Yes.
So
So now moving on to air regulations. So that is one subject which is very vast, and there are a lot of things to memorize, I would say,
yes.
and keep revising it because the numbers might be confusing sometimes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So
Especially for someone who is studying it for the first time.
absolutely, yes. There are certain things to be memorized in air regulation. Yes, I agree. And those things, I mean, absolutely, no one can do anything about it. Like, for example, if certain act has, certain number, okay? So, smoking in aircraft is prohibited has number 25, rule 25. Then that needs to be remembered as it is. It is rule 25. No one can explain why is it rule 25,
Yes.
right? So that's how it is. So those things need to be remembered. Annexures need to be remembered. Apart from that, the requirement for licenses, like for example, a certain license requires, let's say CPL requires 100 hours of PIC time. It requires 20 hours of instrument. If you need instrument rating, then you need 40 hours of instrument flying. So these numbers have to be remembered as it is. So no one can explain why these numbers are there. That's a rule, and that needs to be remembered. So that is something which is required to be remembered. But apart from that, even air regulation has many things which need understanding. Like for example, the runway lights, then runway markings, then certain airport structures. Like for example, a certain slope of obstacle clearance slope. Those things have certain rules that need to be known. Apart from that, air regulation has things like charts, so wherein Jepson charts which you use it. So where if you take a relevance of those charts, things become pretty easier to learn and understand. So that is a pretty important topic. Apart from that, air traffic services. So how the air traffic services like area control services, how the approach control services, how tower operates and functions, what is the separation kept between the two airplanes, what is a wake turbulence separation, and what is the time that is required to be lapsed after bigger airplane before a small airplane lands. So things like that. Okay, so this I'm telling you in a layman terminology, but there is something called as heavy, medium, and light
Weak turbulence
weak
category.
turbulence categories. Okay, so those things are there. Apart from that, air regulation has a huge topic like human performance. Human performance, earlier there was not much emphasis given to it, but if pilot knows their or his own limitations, that at night, yes, he's in WCL, so your reflexes and senses are not at its optimum, so you need to be extra cautious about it, and then take necessary precautions to avoid that low reflexes and lower circadian rhythm at that point. So to avoid that, you need to be rested well, you need to manage your daily cycle before that flight
Mhm.
in a appropriate manner. So these things are learned in as well as hypoxia. What are the effect of low oxygen levels at higher altitude? What is the effect on pilots' thinking, decision making ability? So those things are learned in air regulation.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's pretty vast because I have
Yes.
studied regulations for DGCA, and then when I was training in the US, so for that also FAA regulations.
Correct.
And then when we went for the Canadian CPL, at that time also we studied regulations for Canada. So for US and Canada, regulations is more or less the same.
Correct.
The units are different. For DGCA, for getting a CPL, the requirements are different and the units are also different. But yeah, it is manageable to study once you start flying. Every day you are following the rules and regulations, so it becomes a bit easier. Initially, when you are studying for air regulations, just to start with, it might be overwhelming, but revision is the key. The more you revise, the better you be at it.
Correct.
Simple for regulations. And yeah, again, like what problems or what difficulties do students face when they start preparing for air regulations?
Oh yes, these days a lot of students are finding it difficult to study air regulation because of slightly different pattern.
Mhm.
Because here many things which I have explained it like in detail with the practical perspective of that concept.
Yes, I have
That-
seen that when I was studying for regulation in the on-demand one. So I have seen like the rules and regulations which you are explaining. You had the images of the cockpit or of the airport showing like why is it done in a particular way. And recently the syllabus has been modified a bit, right? For that also you have made in detailed explanation about the same, right?
Correct. So those things are really important to understand that if you are using it in practical perspective, then your grasping will be better.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if you just read a certain book or certain sentence, you may not be able to understand what is written there unless you see it, right?
Mhm.
So that is the reason why I really love to shoot air regulation, by the way. So it's amazing.
Yes, and when you see as a student, if you see it visually, you'll understand it better and you learn quickly rather than just reading through again and again.
True, absolutely. Yes, so that's about air regulation. And
These are the 3 subjects which are required if a student wish to do their training abroad, maybe US or New Zealand or any other country. They wish to do their training.
Correct.
And then let's say if a student wants to do their training in India, then there are 2 additional subjects, out of which one is the major one, which is technical general.
Correct. Yes, even technical general is pretty vast and students do face difficulty in that. Technical general comprises of the aerodynamics, that is principles of flight. Then engines. In engines there are 2 sections. One is gas turbine engines or jet engine, and the other one is piston engine. Then the third section is aircraft systems, and fourth one is electrics. So if we talk about aerodynamics, then in that, how lift is generated, how an airplane flies, what is the principle on which it flies, that is Bernoulli's principle. Then all the forces acting on an airplane. So what are the forces during turn, what is required to be done when you turn, then what are the factors that affect stability of the airplane. It is important that an airplane is stable at all times. What is like stability? Let's say for example, if there is any gust, then if airplane attitude changes, it should have tendency to return back to its original attitude after that force is removed. That is stability. So airplane needs to be stable. Of course it is designed to be stable, but there are factors which can make it unstable. Like if loading is not done correctly, as we discussed, if a lot of load is placed behind, then airplane will not be stable and it will lose its longitudinal stability. So lot of factors are there, how the airplane is controlled, with respect to pitch, with respect to bank, with respect to yaw. All these things are covered in aerodynamics. Then moving on to engines, how how the jet engine is designed, what are the components of jet engine, that is compressor, combustion chamber, turbine, and exhaust components. Then how is the working of it? Then piston engine, what are the cycles of piston engine? So those things, like even car engine is piston engine, induction, compression, combustion,
Yes.
and then when it expands, that gives power, and then exhaust. So
Exhaust.
these are the events and strokes of the piston engine. So all these things are covered in piston engine. Then aircraft systems, yes, it is very important to know aircraft systems briefly, so that when you go to the bigger airplanes, then aircraft systems can be understood at
Easily.
ease. Like for example, air conditioning system, pressurization system, then there is hydraulic system, then anti-icing and de-icing system. So those are the systems, like how the pressurization works in these bigger airplanes when they fly at higher altitude. Then these airplanes, if there is no pressurization, humans cannot live safely at higher altitude, okay, without pressurization. So the cabin is pressurized, mean pressure inside the cabin is increased compared to that of the ambient outside pressure. So that is pressurized cabin, and that is made comfortable to humans to stay there for a certain period of time, okay. So that is the pressurization. Then hydraulics, so all the flight controls, they are pretty huge flight controls, like landing gear is there.
Yes.
It's not humanly possible to go there and then
Deploy it,
extend them or retract them,
Yes.
and even operate those flight controls. So it is required that these flight controls are operated hydraulically, and how that functions, that is also studied there. As well as anti-icing and de-icing systems. If you fly through clouds, if the ice is formed on wings, then wing will not be able to generate adequate amount of lift, so that ice needs to be removed. So how that system works, that is also studied there. So that's about an electrical system, how the electrical system in the airplane works.
Yes,
So-
and it sounds pretty interesting subject to study
It
for
is.
someone who is really interested into the airplane.
Correct.
And as it's as vast as navigation, I suppose.
It is pretty vast.
Yes.
It is pretty
So-
vast.
What difficulties do students face while studying technical general?
Yes, technical general, since it is pretty vast, it is pretty much in detail. It is required that they understand the subject well, and then they go for the exam. If they know it well, then that's what is required. I try to make it easy for them so that they understand it well. So yes, many students do face difficulty in getting their technical subject also cleared. Yes.
Yes, and then once they are done with all these 4 papers, and then they plan to do their training for India, then depending on which flight school they join, they have to give a paper called technical specific.
Correct. Yes, technical specific is the paper which is in addition to all these subjects. So now I would like to know from you, as you have recently cleared certain technical specific papers, that
Yes.
certain students ask, I would like to go for technical specific. So what exactly technical specific, and which airplane they should choose, if you could highlight that.
Yes, I had given technical specific for my conversion, as I was
Correct.
flying a different aircraft. So for that, let's say you're joining a flight school which has PA-28, the Piper. So for that, you have to give technical specific. So in that paper, all the details about the aircraft will be there, like the speeds, what type of engine does it have, what are the characteristics of that aircraft, then what are the limitations of the aircraft, then mass and balance as we discussed, and then a detailed information about the systems,
Correct.
and then the speeds, what is the maximum speed the aircraft can operate, then the oil temperatures, fuel quantity, fuel temperatures, oil quantity. So all of that details is mentioned in that, and then there is tire pressure as well. So let's say if you're flying an aircraft, you should know each and everything about that particular aircraft.
Correct.
And this subject is not that vast, but it is a must know for you, because you are planning to fly that same aircraft. You're going to train on that same aircraft.
Absolutely.
So I would say 2 to 3 weeks is more than enough for preparing for technical specific.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
you always have to study from the manual, which is called as POH, right?
Correct.
Pilot
Right.
Operating Handbook
Right,
for
right,
that
right.
particular aircraft.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
depending on which aircraft you're going to train on, that's what you are going to
Correct.
give the exam for.
Correct. Absolutely.
And I don't think so there would be any difficulties in clearing the technical specific,
Absolutely,
because it's
yes.
pretty much straightforward. You just
Absolutely.
have to study the aircraft and go for the exam.
Yes,
People do
yes,
score anyway like 80, above 80. People like students do score anywhere above 80 to 90% in
Correct,
the technical
correct,
specific
correct,
easily,
correct.
because the
True.
portion is not that vast.
True. Absolutely.
So as we have discussed about DGCA exams, what all things an aspiring pilot would study to become a pilot.
Right.
And apart from this, what I would generally advise aspiring pilots is the first step would be your medicals. Once you are done with medicals, the second step is to prepare for DGCA exams.
Absolutely.
So for that, you can join a ground school, or if you want to study on your own, you can do that. But the only thing I see is as DGCA exams or DGCA syllabus is the foundation for your pilot career.
Correct.
So if you are
absolutely.
studying by yourself, you might miss certain concepts, and you might also take longer to clear the exams.
Correct.
So if you can join a ground school, a good one where the subjects are taught in detail, you think that the money you are paying for the ground school is an investment. That
Correct.
knowledge is
Absolutely.
going to stay with you forever. And whenever you go for an airline interview or your flight training, you already know the concept. So once you're clear with concept, you can solve like thousands of questions. But
Correct,
if you
correct.
just go with the question bank,
Correct.
you can only solve those 500 or 1000 questions.
Correct.
Okay, because just
Absolutely.
memorizing doesn't help you,
Absolutely.
right? And as you have experience of more than 16 years, have trained more than 1000 aspiring pilots, how have you designed the program for the aspiring pilot at CNTAA?
Yes. So what happens as a student, it gets pretty overwhelming when so much information comes from so many sources and you don't know whom to rely on, what information to trust, and where to start from. So they get really overwhelmed. Okay, there are so many books and so many fat books are in the market, and which book to refer to? And thinking of this itself becomes too overwhelming. So to ease all of that, I have structured a course in such a way that it becomes chronologically easy for them when they see a certain chapter. Let's say in navigation there are 40 chapters. Then when you look at first chapter, each chapter has topics that are explained in about 5 minutes length, and thereafter followed by that each topic there will be questions. Students who do their training at training center, so they will be getting training from the instructor there, and after that then for revision they will be going through this, and thereafter there will be questions which I have explained, up to about 30 to 40 questions each chapter, and followed by that each particular chapter has got a quiz.
Okay.
So once they know the chapter thoroughly, from all possible question banks that would be there in your mind, those questions are there in our course. You don't have to refer to any other book other than this, and this will really be one everything in one course. So
Mhm.
that way there will be quiz followed by that. Once you score a certain percentage, that is you pass. So, okay, 70 percentage is passing for DGCA. So if you have scored more than 70, then yes, you know that topic
Mhm.
well. If whatever is left over, that you whatever questions you have got wrong, you can check that out. There is a solution at the bottom, so you know where you have gone wrong.
Mhm.
Okay, and thereafter you move to the next
Quiz.
chapter.
Yeah.
So that way the entire course is complete.
Yes, and I myself have done this course back in 2020 when I was a student
Yes, I know.
at CNTAA.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
everything is taught from scratch. So even if you have just cleared the 12th and you are having questions that what if I don't understand? So everything on the on-demand course is taught from scratch. Even if you are planning to join the offline classes for your ground training, everything will be taught in scratch. If you have doubts, Captain Neha will be available with you. Captain Pankaj is there to assist you with your doubts and any guidance you need for your flight training. We are there to guide you as
Absolutely.
well.
Absolutely.
And if you are an aspiring pilot and looking forward to start your pilot training, start your ground school, you can sign up at courses.cntaonline.in and we'll get back to you shortly with all the details, and we would be happy to have you on board.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for watching us till here, and we will definitely be there all the way till you get your CPL and even further from there.
Yes. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye bye. So, if you want to meet my little one, this is my little one. His name is Shivansh. Say hi to them. Say hi.
Actually, वो कैमरे में आ रहा है.
Hello. Hello. Eh, that was good.